Hi, in this video I'm going to show you how to use disconnected tables in Power Pivot to perform some what-if analysis. So what I mean by that, let's say we have a pivot table here. This data comes from two tables. One is a price table. This is the price of coffee, a pound of coffee from 2013 to 2015, the monthly price of coffee. We have our cost here. And from that pivot table, we're also sourcing some data from a rate table. Basically, what this table does is from increments of 5 cents from $1 to $2. The range that €1 could be equivalent to $1, $1.05, etc. So basically, it's just an increasing range. And with that, we're putting that together to form this table. So what we have here is we have our average cost of coffee for each of the individual years. And let's say, for example, if we were to sell this coffee, this is a US-based perspective. If we were to sell this coffee to European countries and had that converted to euros, how much would that cost it to a European customer? So if it was a 1-to-1 ratio where €1 equals $1, of course, if it converted to euros, that'd be $5.45. Now, if we go ahead and increase it, if we did some what-if analysis, there's some currency changes on a day-to-day basis, or we did a weekly or monthly basis, and let's say it went up 20 cents. €1 is $1.20. Therefore, the conversion to euro would be 4.54. Respectively in 2014 from 4.99 to 4.16, and 2015 from 4.72 to 3.93. Now if we went up to $2, basically we would see that cut in half, right? 5.45 cut in half would be 2.73, 4.99, 2.49. As you can see, so we're using a slicer to help us choose the different currency exchange rates to help create some calculations that we can use in column D here. Now, if you've used slicers before with pivot tables, you know that basically what it does is it just gives you a choice to make a selection. But in this case, it looks like our selection is also doing some calculation. So it's doing some currency calculation. So with the currency exchange calculations, we can do that with disconnected tables, and we do that in Power Pivot. And this idea I got from the Power Pivot book, Power Pivot and Power BI book from Rob Colley and Avachal Singh. They got some really great content in this book, so I advise you, if you had a chance, to go pick it up, leaf through it, and use it as a reference guide to learn Power Pivot and Power BI. Well, let's see how we can go ahead and create something like this using the disconnected table feature in Power Pivot. So here I am in a new sheet. I just copied over those two tables, the price table and this rate table where it increments from $1 to $2. And what I need to do first is turn this into a proper table. This is basically just a range of data. So I have to turn this into a proper table in order to add it to the data model in Power Pivot. Now, Power Pivot is a Excel business intelligence, Excel BI type of feature that's available ever since Excel 2010. It was something that you had to download. In Excel 2013, it's just something that you have to enable. And you can just go ahead and Google Power Pivot Excel and go to the Microsoft website to look for instructions on how to download it and or enable it in your specific version. So once we have Power Pivot enabled, there's a Power Pivot tab that is available here. What I'm going to do first is turn these into tables, and I want to name those tables to make it just a little bit easier to work with. So for this particular range of data, I can just select anywhere inside this range of data, press Control T, and it's going to have my Create Table window open, and my table has headers, which is the first column here, first row here. And I'll go ahead and click OK. And I'm going to go ahead and name this table Price. So the table, after I created this table, now it's got a Table Design Tools contextual tab. And I'm going to go ahead and name this table. I'm going to call it, just call it Price. And that's that creation of that table. I'm going to also create the rate table. So take this range of data and go ahead and press Control T. And I'm going to say I'm going to accept these defaults here, and go ahead and type rate here. Right. So once that's created, once the tables are created, I'm going to bring them into the Power Pivot data model. So I'm going to go into the Power Pivot tab and go into Add Data Model, and it's going to add that particular range of data, or that table. And you can see that it's pulled in the data, and it's pulled in the name of the table, and this little link icon is basically a link back to the Excel worksheet. So what this is this is the Power Pivot interface where you do a lot of your work in Power Pivot. I'm going to go back into the Excel workbook, and go ahead and add the other table into the data model. So I'm going to go ahead and switch to workbook here and go into my price tab. And with the Power Pivot tab still available, I'll go ahead and add this to the data model. So once I add this table to the data model, it also has the same link here that indicates that it's a link to that table, and also brought in the table name price. So once that's done, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create a pivot table off these two. Before I do that, actually, let me show you what it looks like in a diagram view. So we have these different views here. This is the data view where you can look at the data in a spreadsheet type of format. You have your grids, right? But you also have a diagram view. And when we click on this diagram view, it's basically showing our table. We basically have our tables, but they're in more of a visual view. And what you can do here is you can start to create relationships between these two tables and basically connect them together. Now, that's not the exercise that for this particular video, because what I'm trying to show is you can have these tables interact with each other without connecting them. And we're going to use this disconnected table concept to perform some calculations in our pivot table. So let's see how that works. I can still create a pivot table in this view. I don't need to be in data view to create a pivot table because I have my pivot table icon here. Let me go ahead and click on that. So now what's going to happen is it's going to ask me where I want to put it. I'm just going to go ahead and accept the default for new worksheet and click OK. And I have my worksheet. And once I click in here, let me go ahead and right click and do the show field list. Usually the field list shows up. If it doesn't, you can go ahead and click within this area of space for you to go ahead and build out this pivot table, right click it, and show the field list. Now with the field list, I'm going to go ahead and bring some of the fields in. So under the price table, I'm going to bring in item. And once I click on item, we have our coffee item. I'm also going to bring in year. Let me go ahead and click on that. And unfortunately, the reason why when I clicked on year, it brought it into the sum of values is the year like 2015, 2013, 2015, 2014, 2015. Excel recognizes them as numbers more so, and once it sees numbers, it usually puts them into the value field where it would do some sum or averaging. So I'm going to go ahead and just pull it over here into the rows field, and so it kind of looks more. It's more of a category, more of an item. So with that done, I'm going to also put in the cost. And once I click on cost, since it's a number field, it's going to put it into the values area. So I'm going to go ahead and click on cost. The other way we can do it, in addition to checking off the boxes, we can just click and drag. You can just drag it into the values field. So I don't really want to sum the cost. I want to average it because I want to have the average for the year. So I'm going to go ahead and go into the pivot table here, right click, and go under summarize values and summarize it by the average. So I have my average here. So that looks like it's way too much into the decimal places. We're in the hundred thousands of decimal places. What I can do here is I can set the display formatting here, or the better place to do it is go back into Power Pivot and set up the data type there so it will display it correctly. So let me go back into Power Pivot. So I'll go to Power Pivot and go to Manage, and I'm back into the Power Pivot window. Let me go back into the data view. And what I want to do is I want to change these values. Right now, if I click on the column, you'll notice that under formatting, it says decimal number. I don't want that. We want them. These are currency, so I'm going to go ahead and change that to currency. Go ahead and change that to currency. Click yes, and it's going to put a $sign in front of it and cut it off at the hundredths place. I'm going to do that for rate. Let me go ahead and click that column and go ahead and select the data type and select currency and click yes. All right, and so I can go ahead and just close this for now. Go ahead and close this for now, and it brings me back into my pivot table. And the nice thing about it, once we do it there, we change the data type there. Once we get back into the pivot table in Excel, it changes it for us automatically. So that's great. So I don't need to change it here. It's probably better to do it in the Power Pivot window or that interface instead of having to do it in the Excel worksheet here. So what I want to do next is I want to build that slicer that gives me the ability to choose the different currency amounts. What I need to do is I need to create a measure. So unfortunately, the measure nomenclature or the measure syntax or the way to describe measure, it's kind of lost its way. When Power Pivot first came up, they called it measures in 2010. And then in 2013, Microsoft decided to call it calculate fields. And then later in Excel 2016, they reverted back to calling it measure. I'm in Excel 2013, and I'm going to create a measure, but it's called a calculated field. So this is something Microsoft did. Unfortunately, the naming didn't really stay consistent through the different versions of Excel. But basically what we're doing is we're creating a measure, even though it's called a calculated field here. I'll go ahead and click on that. I'm going to create two measures or two calculated fields. One is going to be for my slicers. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to align it to the rate table. That's the table that has just the increments from $1 to $2 by 5 cents. I'm going to give this calculated field a name. So I'm just going to go ahead and call it USD to 1 euro. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use an aggregate function. I'm going to use the max aggregate function. So the max function basically will return the largest value in a column or a list of data. So I'm going to use the max. I'm going to go ahead and press tab, and it's going to go ahead and ask me what column name do I get it from. And I'm going to go ahead and call the rate table. I'll just go ahead and type it out. And Excel is pretty polite. It tries to figure out what you're trying to get. And so the rate table is this one. And the text that's in the brackets, the square brackets, is the column. So that was that column name. So I'm going to use rate, and that column of data has USD to 1 euro. So I'm going to go ahead and double click that, and then close parentheses. I'm going to go ahead and check formula to see if there's any errors. Unfortunately, that max tooltip covers up this particular formula. Check formula response. It says no errors in formula, but you really can't see it. So I don't know why the Microsoft team did not fix this, where you can move this tooltip out of the way sometimes, but that's okay. We know that there's a green check mark here, so the formula is right. What I also want to do is change the formatting options to make sure that it's still in currency once it gets calculated, and the symbol is the dollar sign with 2 decimal places. I'll go ahead and click OK, and now the formula, or that particular measure or calculated field, is in my rate table. If I click the drop down here, we'll show that it's there, and it's also added it to the values field here. So you see that it's there. So it also tells you that there relationships between the tables may be needed. So as showed earlier in the diagram view in the Power Pivot interface, there's that view that you can visually see the two tables, and that gives you one way that you can go ahead and make connections between the tables. We're not going to make any connections or relationships between the tables. I'm going to go ahead and X this out, so that gets out of the way. Now I really don't need to have this measure or this calculate field in my values, so I'll go ahead and uncheck that. But I do want to have this as a slicer. I'm going to use this, not the measure, but that field that is in the rate table, that one field in the column. I'm going to right click, and I'm going to add as a slicer. So that's going to pull this up as a slicer. Let me go ahead and kind of move this up here, and maybe give it a little bit more space. Once I select the slicers, I can go under options and increase the column. So it's, instead of having one column going all the way down, maybe let's just give it 4 columns. Makes it a little bit easier to see. All right, and so once that's done, I have my slicer to go ahead and make changes. Now I also need to be able to impact this particular, see a cost change once I click one of these values here. And that's not available until I create another calculated field or another measure. So I'll go ahead and click on my pivot table here. And let me just go into the Power Pivot tab here and look for calculate fields. So I want to create a new one. So this new calculate field, I'm just going to put it into the price table. So I'll go ahead and select that drop down, click on price, and this one would be, I'll just call it converted to euros. Right. So this is going to be what happens when we convert the dollar into euros based on the average cost. So this is going to be the average cost that's shown here divided by the selection of my exchange rate. So this is going to be average cost. So the average cost comes from the price table. So I'm going to go ahead and click price, price, and we'll look for the average cost. And basically you'll notice that we have an M here. And so what the M indicates is it's a measure. So that particular expression is a measure. So, and that's an aggregate measure. So I'm going to go ahead and take that, double click that, and I want to divide that by the rate. So the rate is in the rate table. I'll go ahead and type rate, and I want to use that measure that I created, US to 1 euro. Go ahead and double click that and click OK. Or actually, maybe I can check the formula first. There are no errors in the formula. That's fantastic. Also, I wanted to change the currency. I forgot to do this. Almost forgot to do this. Change the currency and make sure it's symbol and decimal places and click OK. And once that's done, I will have that converted to euro in here. So let me go ahead and just click $1 here. Now you notice that I have 545 here. These are US dollars. So basically, this is the average. I can just go ahead and change this average dollar cost USD. I can just make that USD so it's a little bit more clear. And then this one's converted to euro. So if I have 505 and my euro, 1 euro to US dollar is a 1-to-1 exchange rate, that's fine. Converted to euro should be 505. But if it's not, if let's just say, make it easy, if it's $2, then it should be cut in half, right? So this 505 cut in half is 253. Of course, that's the average total for these 3 years. Let's go for 2013. 545 divided by 2 would give me 273. So basically what this is saying is if I am selling coffee, if I had sold coffee to a European country, they would only be able to, their value of it is 273. So basically it's a strong dollar. And we can use this for what if analysis, and we can kind of chart out, well, what if it was $1.50 instead? That 545 would turn out to be 364. So this is one way that we can incorporate some kind of calculation feature or functionality with slicers and in a pivot table. Usually when you have slicers, you're choosing different filters to show things. But in this case, what we're doing is when we're choosing different values to filter it out, we're actually performing a calculation in the pivot table. So that's kind of a nice thing about this connected tables feature that we're using in Power Pivot. We can do this what if analysis for it. Now there's one thing that we can change for the slicer to make it easier on the eyes. If you notice that there are no currency symbols on the slicer, and that's because number formatting in slicers is something that I haven't seen available yet. So what we can do is a workaround. We'd have to go back into the Power Pivot. We'll just go back into the Power Pivot view and create another column, another header that gives us that view. So let's go into the Power Pivot and go under Manage, and we want to go into the rate column. So what I want to do here is I want to go ahead and kind of make a copy of this first column, but make it viewable as text. So what we can do is we can use a function called format. So I can just type format, and go ahead and tab to open that. And the value I'm going to get is this first value, this column's value. So with the format, I need to put that in quotes, double quotes. So I would double quotes, $, 0.00, and then double quotes, and then press closing parentheses, press enter. And now you're going to notice that it's giving me another column. And basically it's giving me this calculate column generic header. I'm going to go ahead and change that to, I'm just going to use it something a little bit more descriptive what we're going to be using it for. And I'll just call this use for slicer. Right? We can change the name later on. So press enter. Let me go ahead and get back into the Excel worksheet. And now if we go into the rate column, you notice that it's there. So now I'm going to go ahead and not use this particular column for my slicer. I'm going to use this one. But first, let me go ahead and remove that filter. I'm going to clear that filter, and I'm going to add this for my view here. So I'm going to right-click and add this as slicer. And now we have our $signs in here. And let me go ahead and just kind of pull this down here before I remove it. And I'm going to go ahead and move this over here. I'm going to give this 4 columns. I have the slicer selected. I'll go ahead and click on Options. 4 columns here to make it a little bit more presentable. Move that out a little bit more. And now I can just change the header here. I'm just going to change the, I selected here, I'm going to go ahead and change the caption for it. I'm going to call this use for €1, USD for €1, USD to €1, right? So I'm going to change that caption, press enter. I don't need this anymore, but you notice that if I select here, the other slicer will also be selected. So if I select $2, you notice that $2 is selected here. I don't need this anymore, but it's also changed this particular pivot. So we know that it works, right? So I'll go ahead and select this, press delete to get rid of that slicer and use this slicer now because it's got dollar signs in front of it. It's given us a nicer view into the different currency amounts instead of having 1 and then 1.05 and then the last one is 2. It all is kind of consistent in terms of the decimal places and the dollar sign in front of it. So that's the way that we can kind of put currency markers within our slicers and trying to kind of change the number formatting of it. So that was a lot in this video. And basically, the premise of this video was to show you kind of an advanced feature. And basically, what we're doing is we're performing some what-if analysis using disconnected tables in Power Pivot. A little bit more of an advanced feature, but this is one of those cool features that I picked up in the Power BI book by Rob Colley. So if you have a chance, pick it up, check it out. Pretty good book. He goes through a lot of beginning, intermediate, and advanced stuff in that book. So I hope this helps. Thanks for watching.